Welcome back, everybody, to Inside Texas Basketball. I'm your host, Evan Veith, as always, joined by Keenan Womack. Here at Inside Texas, you are watching at the right time because right now we're running a $1 for 4-month deal on the website. Inside Texas is your go-to place for everything Texas sports. Right now, we've had a lot going on with the Sean Miller hire, which we're obviously going to talk about today. But baseball has been doing great. You've had a lot of content for myself and Nash Talks Texas. And, of course, spring football started up yesterday. We were on the scene doing a lot of reporting from that. A lot of first-time news right there. So Inside Texas is the best spot to go for anything Texas sports related. $1 for 4 months is the best deal you're going to get out there for any kind of reporting on college sports. So go sign up now. Go over to our site and talk to us on the boards. It's a great time. Keenan, after that, we have a lot to talk about, as I mentioned. Sean Miller, the new head coach at the University of Texas, replacing Rodney Terry. Officially official now. He's been in Austin for a few days, and you were on the scenes there at his press conference on the same place that Jim Schlossnagle had his. No Aggie reporters or no Xavier reporters the same way they were Aggies, I assume. But Keaton, what were some of your first impressions and some interesting tidbits that happened at that press conference?
Yeah, man. A couple of things stuck out to me. The first of which was he kind of boiled down his program into 4 words, which were pace, movement, toughness, and togetherness. I don't know if that's in order, but those are the 4 points, which is, man, if you're a Texas basketball fan, you got to love hearing pace and movement because that has been missing from this offense for a long time. You know, a lot of these coaches that Texas has hired have been defensive-minded guys. They emphasize defensive intensity over high-octane offense, and that's what you're going to get with Sean Miller's high-octane offense. That, yes, he's had some problems with his teams defending well, but I feel like that won't be as big of an issue when he has more access to more players than he does. You know, you have a guy like on Xavier, like Dalen Swain, like he will find guys like that who can defend the perimeter. You know, hopefully they can get Kendall Weaver back. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But that was important. Also, the other thing that I noticed was he spoke with some finality in his tone, as if like, this is the last job I'm going to take, which I think is an encouraging sign that it's like he's not viewing, there's no stepping stone. This is a destination job for a lot of people, and it certainly is for Sean Miller. And after what Sean was able to do at his last 3 stops, Xavier, Arizona, then Xavier again, the thing that also stuck out to me about him in general is that he's adapted quite a bit over the last few years. He's adapted his offense. He's made it more NBA friendly, as in taking a lot of threes, getting to the rim, getting a lot of free throws. And that's just kind of become the way things have gone with analytics. And you look at teams that don't use those analytics and they're losing in the tournament. You look at a team like St. John's, gets beat by Arkansas, who's more of an analytics team.
Yeah.
And you know, it's Pitino. He's not gonna like fold to the new way of things. So I think it's really important that you have a forward-thinking coach in that sense, that like he's a guy that wants to use a revolutionized offense. And he made that very clear in the presser yesterday, that it's a big part of what he does is that that off-ball movement and that playing with pace.
Yeah, and you did get those 4 words in correct order. I went back on your article right there, and I think that pace and movement part really sticks out to me with some of the returning players, which we'll talk about in a bit. But there's some guys that's really going to fit well with, and I know a lot of Texas fans have been, you know, screaming for some offensive production in the past few years. Even, you know, Chris Beard came in and he was someone who definitely had that defensive intensity as a key point for him. Rick Barnes, of course, you know him for that, and Shaka Smart. When they hired him, it felt like that go offense might be a thing that showed up, but now, like you said, with Sean Miller, a guy who thinks this is a forever home, potentially in Austin. That might have been what Chris Beard was hoping for. Obviously, that kind of was in his hands, didn't happen. But yeah, what I like from what I've heard about Miller is that, yes, he really is committed to the University of Texas, and he's already kind of campaigning, I guess would be the way I would say it. And the way that you were talking about his emphaticness, the way he was final about his words, that it seems like he wants certain players back. Kendall Weaver, it seemed like he has already got the connection and is going to bring him back. It seems like he knows what Texas can be, and that's just so important for the donors who are going to help him out and the people who want to support him NIL money-wise, because that's what some of our readers and some of our fans have been clamoring for, is that Texas doesn't have the NIL money. They're not going to sink it in. Well, maybe they weren't for Rodney Terry, but Sean Miller seems like the guy at this point in time that really is going to emphasize, give us that money, help us spend, and we will create a really good program.
Yeah, he seems like a guy that is very, you know, from talking to him for very briefly yesterday, he seems like a guy that's going to be good with the donors. And that's, I said in the article I wrote yesterday that there's a lot of granular parts to being a head basketball coach in college, right? And a lot of those things are smaller issues that you wouldn't think about necessarily, pleasing boosters, having a good relationship with the student section, which he shouted out directly in the press conference yesterday. He said, I can't wait to have a productive relationship with the corral, which is the student basketball section. I think that it's very important that he gets the excitement going early so that they can improve the NIL budget. It already has been approved that it's going to be more next year. I don't know if I'm allowed to give the exact numbers, but I do know
Probably
that
not
they
right
are.
now.
Yeah, so I'm going to avoid doing that and getting us in trouble. But I have heard that they're going to increase the NIL budget by a certain amount, and it should help them bring in more and better players, because as much as you want to say a coach can do this all by himself, he can't. He needs players that fit his system. And I think with a bigger NIL budget, and this year is going to be probably one of the biggest portal years ever. Now it's sort of a new thing, but I have a strong feeling a lot of great players are going to be in the portal this summer. And with the promise of NIL, a lot of these guys that would go in the second round of the NBA draft are going to come back as well. So you're going to have a lot more upperclassmen that are really good players in the portal this year than you're probably ever going to see going forward with the changes that are coming. So this is going to be a massive portal cycle, I think.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned it right there at the end, and we've talked about this with the football as well, that this might be the last year that this is how the portal works, just in the massiveness of it. There's bound to be some reforms soon. I think some players are understanding that and want to get to their spot and get to the right place, which that would help Miller out because, like you said, he's getting the NIL budget increase. I like that you mentioned the corral there because that's something that I remember from when I was a freshman. I'm a senior here at the school right now, wrapping it all up. And I remember before it was even called the corral, before we were at the Moody Center, Chris Beard, that was his first thing he did on toes on campus, on Speedway, talking to students, handing out flyers personally, getting them all to walk to the stadium with him to come to games. And it seems like Miller may not have that quite as much boots on the ground mentality to him, but the corral definitely, it's been good in the Terry era. It's not elite. It's not, if a football, the Taco Bell student section kind of idea. And I think Miller might be better at bringing both that energy and the alumni fan base energy back. And I think on the topic of NIL, with what you're talking about with the spending, Texas is not a blue blood in the sport. There's only really 5 blue bloods in college basketball. And there's, your red bloods, Indiana's in there, the new bloods kind of, that maybe gets it to like 15 teams. But after that, why can't Texas be right in that next tier? Why? They have the pockets for it. It seems like Miller wants that to be what this team is. And we can talk expectations later on, as we're probably going to get a little bit more into the remaining roster guys. But, Miller has all the chances to make this, like you said, his last stop in a place that he can continually get competitive teams in and out with the portal and with recruiting.
Yeah, and you look at, I asked him a question at the press conference yesterday that was essentially along the lines of, you see teams like Alabama and Kentucky that are high-octane offenses, and they're succeeding in the SEC. Does that give you more reason to think you'll be successful? And he basically answered with, I trust my system no matter what conference it's in. So, it is going to be a matter of play styles, right? You're going to battle these teams in the SEC that are very physical, that slow it down, like Rick Barnes' team in Tennessee. Auburn kind of does that to an extent. But you also have the high-flying teams, the Alabamas and Kentuckys. And then Florida is really a mix of both of those things, which is why they're getting so much buzz as a national title favorite, because they really can play both ways. But this Texas team is definitely going to be focused on the offensive end for the most part. Now, defense is obviously important in basketball, but I think it's a lot more reliable to have an offense that can score more consistently than one that goes on 6-7 minute droughts. Even if your defense isn't quite up to par, I think that offensive mentality is not only going to win games, but I think it will bring talent to the school, because I think it's going to give guards opportunities to score a bunch of points, get NBA looks. I just think about what Trey would have looked like in a Sean Miller offense, and he probably wouldn't have averaged more points, but he probably would have been more efficient. He would have, he would have been getting much easier looks throughout the games because there's so much off-ball movement, so many opportunities for him to get to his spots without having to fight through somebody to do it. So, I'm very excited about watching this offense go. And I think it's a situation where, and I said this with Joe on Sunday, right after the hire was made or whenever it was, I think that this new era is going to be productive to putting dudes into the NBA because it's just one of those systems where guys are going to look good. And I think that that's going to help with recruiting, and it's going to be a very positive impact on this program in general.
Yeah, and of course, an offense can't be operated without the personnel behind it, as we're going to talk a little bit about who's coming back. Firstly, players that are not going to be on the Sean Miller team, 6 of the rotation players. Trey Johnson technically has eligibility. I'd give it a 0% chance he comes back to school.
0%.
He's going to go to the NBA next year, make tons of money, be a great scorer there. Arthur Kaluma, Caden Shedrick, starters who are out of eligibility, as well as Julian Leary, Jason Kenan, Zaire Onyema are all graduating. So that leaves Texas with a decent amount of players, but not a lot of rotation guys. You have graduate transfer Tremont Mark, who does have eligibility. This has been kind of a topic of discussion, but what he's going to do, who knows exactly, but looks good in the point guard position at the end of the year. He is officially a player that can come back to play college basketball. Seniors are Jordan Pope and Kendall Weaver, 2 guys that you'd assume Miller's already talking to, hoping to bring back. Weaver, maybe the most important one. That's someone I outline as the most important player to get back. But then you still have some, juniors like Malik Presley and Devin Pryor. Pryor played more than Presley last year, but also younger guys. Nick Cody, a former, I believe, top 60 recruit in last year's class that Terry brought in. Jamie Vincent, a real tall dude, got some good looks in there in the season. And then John Clark, who's a top 60 recruit in this year's class that Terry originally had committed. He's still committed as far as we know. Nothing official has changed about that. So right there, that is 8 guys who Miller can at least talk to, try to get to stay around and build a roster around it. Who for you, maybe outside of Weaver, because I think that might be an easy answer, who maybe are the younger guys are you looking to hopefully keep on this team long term?
Younger guys definitely want to keep Cody around. He's a guy that, we saw this year how bad the front court depth was.
Yeah.
It's important to have depth in your front court. I'm not saying Cody will be an amazing player this season, but he's a guy that should get minutes. He's a guy that should develop. And he's a guy that by his junior year can probably be a really, really good player. Out of Newman Smith in Carrollton, I forget exactly where he was in the top on 3, but I was looking at it yesterday. He was pretty high up there considering his position and all that. Other guys that I want to, obviously John Clark, we have no idea if that's going to happen just because RT's gone. Jamie Vincent's a guy that I think probably will stick around. I think they should probably keep him around just because he has height, and he's a guy that isn't super skilled inside yet. He's not super strong, but he does have good instincts with shot blocking and defending the rim. So I think there's a place for him on this roster. But man, I think Jordan Pope has to be a priority, man. I think he is built for a Sean Miller offense. I think he would be a perfect complement to whoever they're going to play at point guard next year. And now I have no idea how many of these guys they get back. They could get none of them back, but I can say I did see Kendall Weaver at the Sean Miller press conference yesterday. So I think that's probably a good sign for them that he was there, right, supporting. I didn't see Pope, but again, that doesn't mean anything either way. I have no idea. But seeing Weaver there was cool, and Sean talked to Weaver after the press conference. They had like a little conversation. Some people took videos of it and posted it online, which I didn't do, but I did see them talking. So, it's going to be a completely new team next year. Like you 100%. Might have 2 or 3 guys come back at the most, probably, which lends me to thinking about like who are some other teams that turned it around quickly, that built a roster from scratch and turned it around. Saw 3 or 4 examples of that this year, right? We saw Dusty May at Michigan do the same thing. They went from a 8-24 team to a 27-9 team in one season. You look at Louisville, Pat Kelsey. That team was 3-17 in the ACC last year. They went 18-2 this year in conference. Kentucky built a completely new roster there in the Sweet 16. They were 3 seeds. So it is possible to do it in this current era because there's so much overturn of players and so much change every offseason. Like it is possible to build a competitive roster overnight. And the other thing is, when everybody has a new roster, nobody does. So that excuse is kind of out the window for continuity and things like that. It's like you got to hit the ground running.
Yeah, it's almost like everyone's playing that Duke play style. I'm surprised you didn't say the Crab 5 there, going from under 500 to Derek Queen hitting that beautiful game winner. But,
yeah, no, that's a great example too. A lot of that's Derek Queen being a
what a stud he is. But yeah, and on the topic of Weaver, I think the selling point with him for Miller is, hey, you saw how much people love Brock Cunningham. You are way better than Brock Cunningham in this offense right now. The shooting will come hopefully in the senior, even if it's 30% on corner threes. It might be able to help out. And it's going to be your third year. People already like you. You're already kind of a fan favorite, the veteran on the team. Stay around, and Pope, kind of the same idea. Get another year in, be an important scorer on this team. And I think before we talk true portal strategy, we're going to hear from Luxe here in a minute.
This video is brought to you by Luxe Kitchen and Bath. Luxe has been offering high-end kitchen and bathroom remodels for 3 generations throughout the greater Austin area. With 5-star review after 5-star review on Google and Facebook, and an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, you can put your faith in Luxe Kitchen and Bath's award-winning designers and skilled craftspeople to bring to life that dream vision of your special home. But that's not all. Luxe's all-star team provides full remodels, large additions, and even commercial build-outs as well. So call Luxe Kitchen and Bath at 833-358-LUXE today. Or visit luxekitchenbath.com to discover where quality meets luxury and begin the process of transforming your home. Get a free quote today by calling 833-358-LUXE. That's L-U-X-E. Or by visiting luxekitchenbath.com. Link in the description.
Thank you, Elsie, as always, for that. As we're going to talk a little bit about portal strategy, because we've identified some key guys to get back. Obviously, retaining as much height as possible was one of the big things that you mentioned. Especially after last year with Texas's front court. But what do you think is important for Sean Miller to do here, as the portal's already open? He's allowed to start talking to players and get some commitments going.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a situation where you got to be going for not just the best players, but you got to be going for guys that fit what you do on the offensive end, right? You need multiple ball handlers. You need guys that are big enough to set good screens off the ball. So, you want some size at like the wing spot, for example, ideally. Yep. If you look at Xavier's team this past year, like Ryan Conwell was kind of their star scorer. And he's a guy that's not super dissimilar from Jordan Pope in that he's very effective, both shooting the ball off the catch and off the bounce, although Pope was better off the bounce than he was off the catch, which is kind of rare. Yeah. But he just does it way more. So you want a mix of catch and shoot, movement shooters, and off the dribble guys to like really have a triple threat outside, like on the perimeter from a scoring perspective. And then defensively, you want bigs that can play drop, that are quick enough to hedge on the perimeter, because that's kind of what he likes to do. The guards switch a lot defensively, and the bigs will play drop or they'll hedge. And so you got to get bigs that can kind of do both, or you got a big that can do either. It's a lot of this is going to be building for the offense versus the defense, and you just kind of hope those defensive players come through. But what's really important is, point guard is probably the most important thing for this offense, because you need somebody who ideally can drive the rim too, right? You want to be able to create space that way. But with all the ball reversals and off-ball screens and things like that, the point guard's going to have a much easier job this year than he did last year, whoever that point guard might be. It's going to be a lot less decision-making off the dribble and a lot more of it. It's going to be the system putting you in position to make shots. And so I am a big fan of the idea of going for multiple ball handlers at once, maybe playing 3 guards at the same time. That seems like a strategy he's employed before. So basically you want guards who are able to shoot off the dribble and off the catch, and you want somebody who can control the playmaking as a point guard. But again, the system's going to do a lot of those things for those guys. So again, shooting is super important to make Miller's offense work.
And early in some of our episodes this year, we talked a little bit about maybe the downfalls of the roster building at this Texas team, that Terry and his staff maybe weren't doing right. Julian Larry, I think, led the team in assists with 2.8. And we'd just been clamoring that they needed a true point guard. They needed another center in the portal that they didn't get. And, that might help out maybe the next year's JT Toppin ends up coming to Texas instead of going to Tech. But I completely agree with you. I think they need someone that can get you those 4 or 5 assists a night. It doesn't, like you said, it doesn't have to be challenging. That's what the off-ball screens are for. That's what the movement and the pace is for. Just someone that you can get the ball in their hands in the backcourt and get the ball up to the front court quickly and efficiently. That's the number one option for me. In a perfect world, I think Texas returns at least Weaver and Pope, and those are your 6th and 7th mans. I would love it if Pope was your bench scorer, your spark plug, and then you can get 3 other guards and have a 3-guard lineup where you have maybe some wing versatility. You have a true point guard, another shooter that can come off the screens. Then, like you said, a defensive center. I think in college basketball, it's so hard to find a center that can space, play defense, contest rebounds and also block shots really effectively. But if you have a pure defensive center that's got the size to rebound, and then you have maybe some more skillfulness in Nick Cody off the bench, I think that's a good formula for Sean Miller's team, and that's what he's going to be looking after. Are you someone that would prefer youth in the portal this year to build up, I guess, more of a continuity long term, or are you hoping that at certain positions he goes for some of these seniors or grad transfers that are more impactful right now and maybe have more experience in the college basketball game?
I think you got to go maturity. I think you need guys that can contribute immediately because, Sean Miller's he's trying to hit the ground running, and you bring in a bunch of sophomores, right? There are definitely going to be guys, like I said earlier. This is going to be a really, really big year for the portal. There's going to be a lot of big name entries, and Texas is going to have to compete, and they're going to have to throw money around to get some of those guys. Another thing that I was going to mention earlier is about rim protection in college. It's just very rare to have a very good rim protector in college, right? If you look at, I often say this about guards who are in the G League who will say, oh, this guard's having an amazing G League season because his rim finishing numbers are great. And it's if you're a good rim protector, you're not in the G League, you're in the NBA.
Yep.
So if that's true, then it's also true that college basketball lacks elite rim protection a lot of the time. There's a lot of guys who play drop, but there's not a lot of guys who can also defend out to 10 feet, defend out to 15 feet, and play drop. So I think it's really important that you draft guys that can defend the perimeter so you don't have to rely completely on a rim protector, because there's a lot more good perimeter defenders than there are post-control defensive guys who can protect the rim and block shots. So I would say that very important to have a forward that can defend as well and not rely on your defensive center.
Yeah, and you just don't have these true defensive anchors fall into your lap. I mean, probably two of the best ones this year are Kamal Malawash and Thomas Sorbert, who are going to be lottery picks in the NBA because they have that. That is what their selling point is. And even, players like Janai Broom, who led the SEC in blocks, I'm not sure how much of that is pure one-on-one, getting outmanning the guy and blocking it. He has size, verticality, but also Auburn's defense gets him into spots where he can contest shots very easily. So, yeah, I think it's too much to ask to get a player from, a mid-major program that's really a naturally gifted shot blocker. But if he can play smart, have active hands, he's going to contest the ball at times throughout. So that's what's important for Miller to get. I do like that, say Vincent, Clark, Cody all return. If he can get that, that's a long-term building block in that position that feels like Texas hasn't had in a while, when they had that time where they were getting these one and done centers, your Miles Turners, you had the Mo Bamba or all that stuff. But when was the last time it felt like Texas had a true developmental center outside of maybe Dylan Disu, who also came from the portal, and he was more of a score first guy? It feels like that's something that Miller may be able to develop with these guys. But like you said, I think having people that can play right now is going to be important, because we talked about Dusty May, we talked about Maryland's team, all these teams. The turnaround is possible. You can be a Sweet 16 team next year if you're Texas. So the portal is going to be different after this. It's going to be harder to get guys that want to bounce around in 4 different schools in 4 different years. So take advantage of that. Find a mid-major point guard who was dominant, and you can get him to come to Texas and say, hey, we'll throw some NIL money, get you able to play point guard at a big brand like this. I think portal strategy we've gone over a bit, but I really want to know, what do you think you're getting with this Sean Miller-led team, not just for next year, but just in the future, as we talked about this being a long-term job for this coach?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to get a team that scores a lot of points, that has a lot of – they play up tempo. It's like sexy basketball, which Texas hasn't had in a long time, right? It's basketball that you want to turn on and watch. You're not just watching it because you're a Texas grad or fan. You're watching it because it's exciting. I mean, look at Kentucky's offense this year. That is fun to watch. Look at Alabama's offense. It's fun to watch. Look at BYU's offense. It's fun to watch. That is a selling point to recruits. There's no doubt about that. That playing a fun, up-tempo offense is going to get the guys who want to be scorers. It's gonna get their attention, right? And Texas has reached out to a couple of guys already. They reached out to Bryce Lindsey. I think he went to James Madison. He was a point guard. I think he was Sun Belt Freshman of the Year, if I recall correctly. I remember seeing that. Yeah. So Bryce Lindsey's a guy. They reached out to Magoon Guath, the San Diego State center, who's from ULIS, I believe. So they are making moves already on some guys. But I think that overall, you want a team that
is versatile in that they can play multiple styles and win. Like you look at Florida this year, I always go back to them as an example of a team that can just beat the crap out of you in the paint, but they can also go up tempo and just outscore you with their guards, and they run a very analytical offense as well. So I think it's very important that Sean is bringing this idea of offense to Texas that is NBA based, that is analytics based. I don't know if it's, explicitly analytics based, but it definitely has analytical aspects to it, the focusing on the efficient shooting and things like that. So I think overall you're going to get a team that's competitive pretty quickly. I'm not going to be able to say whether they're going to make a Final Four or whatever, but I feel like this is a team that's going to make Sweet 16s more regularly than Texas fans are used to. And I think that that's enough to get people involved and start to build like a championship program. Because if he gets to the Sweet 16 in his first year, people are going to be really stoked.
Yeah, and that's probably all fans are asking for. It's, hey, let's get to a second weekend appearance, and even if it's just winning one game, like getting the tournament, winning a game, having a good year in the SEC, I don't think fans will be out on him. And talking about this offense stuff, I was doing a little research before the show and had a fun little trivia, I guess factoid here. Tommy Penders, who's the second winningest coach in Texas history, a guy who coached a lot in the 90s, only had 2 years where he had less than 80 points per game in his time coaching. Since then, since he's left, there have only been 2 seasons where Texas averaged more than 80 points per game. And that was in the 2007 season with Kevin Durant and that 2009-10 season with Damian James, Avery Bradley, a bunch of NBA guys. So Sean Miller might be the first one in 15, 16 years to implement an offense that's at the level that he's going to make it at. And I like that Lindsey is a target that they had. Getting a freshman would be maybe a good choice. A former A&M player, actually, who's going to have 3 years of eligibility. But, yeah, I think that the portal is going to be a big play for Miller here early. Recruiting is going to have to be better under him. Obviously, Trey Johnson was a huge win, probably one of the biggest wins that Texas has ever had in recruiting. But can that be more than one guy in a class? Cody is also in that class, but can he get 3 guys in this next year's class? Maybe bring over I believe he has a point guard who's a top 100 recruit that was committed at Xavier. Can he bring him over? Get that recruiting down, and Miller's offense is what's going to intrigue fans long term. But just in general, I think the demeanor and the way he talks and just his vibe that he brings to the town is synonymous with what Texas has been building, what CDC has been wanting in Austin. So, personally, I've heard a lot of people talk about B+ grades for him. I know you had a different opinion on that. What would you grade this hire, and how are you feeling about him going into the future of Texas basketball?
I give it an A. I don't know. A+ would be like, Nate Oates or something, but I'd give it an A. I think truly this is a great hire, and I think it's exactly what they're looking for. I think it's a guy that can run an exciting offense and recruit guys to come and get them to buy in enough defensively to win a lot of games. I think he's going to win a lot of games, a lot of regular season games, a lot of conference tournament games, and I think he'll get hot in the tournament every once in a while too. So I think this is a team that is going to go from kind of a laughing stock, because that's kind of what it was this year. I mean, they weren't the last team, but some of the things that happened in some of these games, I mean, the inability to break the press against Mississippi State, there's just moments this year that CDC was like ripping his hair out. And I don't think you're going to have those moments with Sean Miller, because the guy is just a consummate professional at coaching basketball. He lives and breathes the sport. He loves it. And he has, again, like we were saying earlier, this is going to be his last place. And I don't think he wants to move on quickly. I think he wants to hold down this job for 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, and it seems like, Keenan here, our chief expert on Texas basketball, is pretty excited for what's going on. I am as well. As I'm transitioning out of my time at Texas, this basketball program wasn't something that was enjoyable to watch really these last 2 years. And I think a lot of the younger people who might be watching this, future Longhorns, current underclassmen, Sean Miller is going to bring this team around, and he's going to at least give you a roster you're going to be excited about next year. So Longhorns already in a better spot, in my opinion, with this hire. I agree. It was a good hire. And I think that's going to be all from us, Keenan. As always, Inside Texas is behind us with this show. $1 for 4 months of inside content is just the best deal you're going to get out there. Football, baseball, basketball, all really important sports right now with the new hires and baseball rolling, football in spring practice. So make sure you go over there, subscribe, read our articles. Some of them you might have to be subscribed to read. So just always thank you all for watching. Keenan, thanks as always for coming on and giving so much insight. You've been really, really hitting the ground running with all this reporting with Sean Miller. So thanks so much, Keenan. Any last words before we sign off?
Nah, man, I'm just looking forward to the future and looking forward to keep doing this show, man.
Me too as well. And we'll keep this one rolling as we get into it. thank you all so much for watching. Go over to Inside Texas, subscribe, like, and subscribe here on YouTube. And thank you all for being here. Have a good one.